Hi everyone, I'm here to talk to you about your graded memoir. So when you receive your memoir from me, I will email it to you in D2L in the email message part of D2L. And it will look the same way as it did when you received your partner's paraphrase draft today, that the little red dot will alert you to an email, and then you'll have your graded memoir. And the first part of this PDF file with your graded memoir in it, the first part you will see is this grade sheet. You notice it has information about our course, that this is the graded draft ratings and comment sheet, so I call it a grade sheet. Over here you see are the ratings. You'll see the ratings again in a minute when I scroll down. Here's what the ratings mean, I guess I should say. Your name will be here, the name of the assignment will be here, and I will have lots of writing in this section, comments for you to consider as you revise. So remember, you're doing a midterm portfolio and a final sort of mini portfolio, those two big assignments that are worth each of them 25% of your grade. And so I put a plus column here, a minus column here. This is where I will point out the strengths of your essay. I don't list every strength that I noticed, just the top 2 or 3. And then in the minus column, I'm talking to you about things that could be improved. We've used that plus and minus column system a couple of times this semester as we've responded to readings. And we haven't done readings for the summary assignment or the paraphrase assignment because there aren't a lot of super great examples of that, with the exception of that Philip Lau essay we looked at in our textbook today. So you could go back and see if you could find examples of where that student is using sources and putting them in the form of a summary or in the form of a paraphrase. So not a lot of examples for us to read there, but of course we've been doing quite a bit of reading. So plus column, what the essay has done well, minus column, what the essay needs to improve in, how your writing can improve. And one thing I'll stop and mention is that you might, as we continue the semester, keep track of the pluses and the minuses and see which pluses are consistent, see where the list of pluses grow, and likewise, where do the list of things that could be improved, the weaknesses in the writing, turn into positives because you're using revision to improve the quality of your writing. So that's the idea here, that I'm telling you what is already strong and what needs improvement. Then you'll see at the bottom of the grade sheet these categories that you're being rated according to. And you might be thinking, well, Beth, we haven't talked about these, but actually we have. Not all of them yet, but many of them already. So I'm going to switch screens for just a second. I'm going to go into our D2L course. I'll remind you that on the content page, I've provided the link to this in at least one of the checklists. But I want to remind you that everything I'm giving you access to in the checklist is saved here. And I have a table of contents item called course handouts we've made together. We have made 2 things so far together, the What is Good Writing handout and the noun comparison handout that we used in class. On one of the Saturdays, we were working on the memoir. And this is definitely a handout we made together because you'll remember that, oops, that's too big and that's too small. There we go. You'll remember that, for heaven's sake, stop bouncing around. You remember we made this together. I asked you guys to write in your journal for a few minutes, and then I asked for volunteers and made this list. On the right, you'll see a strengths column. That's the plus. On the left, strengths column. On the right, the weaknesses column. That's the minus, right? And so you've done this activity in your journal a couple of times, and we've had this discussion. So when I say focus on the grade sheet, I'll put the grade sheet back on the screen in just a second. I'm talking about things related to main points and were things not scattered. Somebody in class offered that up to help us to understand what focus is. Here's another one. Focus related. The conflict and the stakes of telling the story are clear. Okay, so just an example of what flow is. Organization, this has to do with paragraphing and transitions. And we've talked a lot about transitions, not as much about paragraphing, but we still have several weeks of the semester left. So want you to know that when I'm talking about organization, I am talking about paragraphing, transitions, as well as introductions and conclusions. Okay. Here in our good writing handout, we've talked about flow, transitions, and flow. We've talked about back and forth. And this was specific to the one story we read in class together about the dad and the son having a dialogue, and actually the use of dialogue, but a back and forth is also a kind of structure. We've talked about essay structure in class. Narration, that's a part of organization. So we've talked about those things as they're relevant to the two assignments that we've been working on. Specifics. I bet if I go here, there'll be something about specifics. Yeah, here's one. Adjectives and descriptions. But specifics can also be use of nouns, specific nouns, concrete nouns, can be examples. Remember there was the chapter called exemplification in the textbook that we didn't read specifically. I didn't assign it to you specifically, but mentioned that it was there. Dialogue, those are specifics. Specific examples of what people are saying to one another within the memoir or in the story that you were retelling in the memoir. So a lot of these items on the grade sheet I'm just showing you, we have talked about them, but not as they're presented here. And so that's why I'm showing you the handout and reminding you about some of the things we've talked about. What do I mean by creativity? Well, I'm going to push you this semester to always try to do something that's outside the box of an academic assignment. Do I teach you the academic requirements? Absolutely. But usually, this has been my experience as a student. When I go out of my way to put a unique spin on something I'm writing, something I'm presenting for work, something I'm presenting at a conference, something that I'm making to share my human expression, creativity is a really important element. And so I'll be looking for elements of creativity this semester. And we spent a whole, probably at least an hour in class this Saturday. We went over concrete nouns, comparisons, verbs. I was talking to you about a way to use description that wasn't just using adjectives, as we so often see in learning writers writing. So have we addressed it for the assignment that you're being graded on? Absolutely. Sentence accuracy is all about that 20 most common errors work we've been practicing. So when you see your graded draft, you'll see many more numbers. The first day of class, I used a green pen to mark a couple of errors in the draft when I read in class. The next time you saw your memoir with numbers, it was with black ink. And then the one that you'll see when I return it to you will be in blue ink. So you'll see the new numbers in blue. You're not being graded on this source usage section at all. Even though a works cited entry was required for the epigraph, I did not. I put NA on everybody's graded memoirs for this category, and then you were graded according to your use of the writing process. Did you use it effectively? I relate that to the quality of the writing, which I've evaluated up here, and then revision quality. I look to see a couple of things. Someone who's revised well will not have a large number of sentence errors, the numbers from the 20 most common errors sheet. They won't have a lot of paragraphing work to revise. They won't have a lot of transition work to revise. And so I can evaluate the use of your revision, your practice of revision, I should say, according to the number of errors and the types of comments I'm putting on your draft, where I'm telling you this is an area to improve. Okay, so that's the grade sheet, and then you'll probably see your grade written down here, a certain number of points out of 50. If I average those two or divide one into the other, I get your percentage or the grade. That's how I'm giving you the letter grade. And then up here, I wrote the numbers that are repeating quite a bit from the 20 most common errors sheet, so you are able to track the pattern of your errors. All right, I think that's all I need to talk to you about grade sheet wise. And I just wanted to very quickly remind you that the revision that you can choose to do for this coming Saturday, a week from today's class, um, is a choice. Do I recommend that you revise? Of course, it benefits you in many ways. You learn how to revise. There's my one. Two, you start to work on an essay that will probably go in your midterm portfolio. It's worth many more points than the 50 points the memoir could have earned you. And you learn what it takes to create, make, produce, whichever word you want to use, effective writing. You can't just write an essay in a couple of hours and turn it in and expect that it's quality in every way. All the aspects that writing requires. Making sure the content is interesting, making sure you have your paragraphs set right, that it makes sense when a reader reads through it, that it has a flow, that it's engaging, that it's creative, that it has an interesting beginning and an end that somehow circles back to that beginning, because often in great writing, where a writer starts is in some ways where the writer has to end. The key phrase being in some way where the writer needs to end. I could talk for hours on what good writing is, but I can't. This is a video and you're tired of listening to me already. So I want you to please consider revising, because you can learn a lot from doing so. What's the requirement? I told you in class today, the requirement is you bring a printout of your new memoir to class, and I will collect it from you at some point during the class period. And I will probably keep the hard copy of your memoir so that I can compare the old version to the new version. But when I grade the new revision, if it is better, you will earn a higher grade. If it's the same, you'll keep the same grade. If it's in some ways worse than it was before, which I've mentioned before sometimes happens when we revise, because we're working out how that revision needs to occur and can't always be a direct step forward. Sometimes when we're learning, we take steps backward before we move forward. So if the grade gets worse, then you will keep the original score. And I think that's all. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to call me or email me, or even stop by this week. I do have office hours on campus 5 days a week. I am sometimes out of the office because I'm doing my during the week job on campus, but if I'm there, I will be so happy to see you, and we can talk through your memoir. If you have questions about how to revise or what to revise, or would this be a good approach to revise, we can definitely talk over those things. I hope you guys have a great week. Take care.